What's going down? It's the Post Podium Podcast where we are all truth and no sodium. I am your co-host, Aramis.
And this is Keyshawn. Make sure you slap that like button before you get into the media room.
And pound that subscribe button, please. Pound it. Like foot, elbow, fist, however you need to do it.
Whatever you got, pound it.
Everything except private parts. We can.
No, we don't want that. No. It's a kid show.
So let's get to it, man. We got some signings we got to get to. We got some signings from last week. We got two of them actually. First one was an extension, a contract extension.
We'll say that.
Which is, I'm highly pissed about it. I'm just gonna say that right off the bat. I'm not happy about this at all because I really was looking forward to having, two bigger guys in the middle. But we'll see what Sean does with him this year. This is gonna be a different defensive style. I'm not gonna say look, but it may be a different defensive style this year. We'll see how it goes. So Ed Oliver signs a 4-year extension.
Right.
Is that accurate? For how much?
4 years, $68 million. So, I mean, on the surface, it looks bad, but what you think about, they actually opened up a lot of cap space. Mm-hmm. Well, not a lot. They opened up some cap space, which is how you got Leonard Floyd. But I do like the signing in the sense that, you have continuity finally somewhere in his room.
Correct.
You have continuity. Now, what I expect next is I expect Daquan Jones to be re-signed. Because in doing so, you're going to free up more money. And as being said in this press conference before, I think it was before the Floyd numbers came out, we're actually, once you bring in the top 53, we're actually $5 million over the cap already. So
even with the contract extension?
Yeah.
Okay.
So with the top 51, we have about $3 to $5 million. But when you look at the top 53, you're going to have about, he said, $5 to $6 million over the cap.
Right.
So your team that you have right now is not going to be the teams you're going to have in a couple of weeks or once you get into training camp. Mm-hmm. They're going to be looking, as he said, looking to trade people, looking to acquire people on the cheap, and you may have to cut some folks. So they are factoring in, as we spoke about with the Von Miller issue, him not being ready. So we'll get into that a little more with the next person we talk about. But, yeah, I think the Ed Oliver signing gives you a little versatility, and it's a good contract because it's an average contract for a defensive tackle.
Okay.
So, yeah, with saying that, $16 million is a tough pill to swallow, but they have a void year. And once
there's a void year?
There's a void year in there.
Nice.
Yeah, so it's actually a 3-year deal worth, I think, $45 million.
Okay.
And when you look at who's coming down the pipe, you got Quinnen Williams, you got guys that are signing for $20 to $25 million. 16 is not too bad for a guy who can give you 5 to 7 sacks a year.
I feel slightly better about that. I'm still not 100% happy about that.
Understood.
But let me ask you this about, you mentioned Daquan Jones potentially getting a new contract, with all this kind of, falling the way it's falling. How does that fit into, or let me ask it this way. Is the contract restructures or the contract extensions the same as the kicking the can down the road sort of, like, isn't that the same thing as
in a sense? Well, in a sense, the reason why it's a little different is because you actually have the man for the years. Now, if you're restructuring, you have him on the salary cap, but he's not playing for you at that point in time. Now, if you extend him, then you do have the option of having him for the whole duration of the contract. So when you look at Von Miller, who has 2 avoidable years at the end,
yeah,
he's technically not on the team. So he's going to have to be either re-signed or they're going to have to do something with his contract to extend him.
Okay.
But when you look at a guy like Daquan Jones, who can play that position, is not a high-impact position in explosiveness, we'll say. But what you do with Daquan Jones, you're allowing Ed Oliver, you're allowing Greg Rousseau, who I'm sure they're going to re-sign. That's going to come down the pipe. You have the smaller linebackers. It's going to allow them to play their game.
Right.
So now it's kind of a put-up or shut-up time for the guys that we have on this team.
Okay. All right. Makes sense. All right, so we'll get to the next signing, which was Leonard Floyd. I was actually kind of excited until I found out how much money he got, $9 million for 1 year. I mean, the way that it's structured, a lot of it seems like it's in incentives. Well, not a lot of it, but a decent portion. I'd say like the last, what, 4 or 5 million is all incentives. Is that right?
More than you know. He's got 2 voidable years on his contract, though. So
it's 2. I thought it was only 1.
Yeah, it's 2. It's a 3-year deal. But when you look at that kind of signing, that's kind of what I'm talking about when I'm going into the voidable hell. Because you're looking at kicking it down the road, and you're going to want to re-sign the guy, I'm sure, if he gives you any kind of productivity.
How old is he right now?
30, 31. He's not that old.
I don't know if I want to re-sign.
But you got to look at what the Bills do, and this is what we're going to talk about in this show. Because I'm gonna beat the drum for draft strategy again later on in the show, and he kind of feeds into it, if you will.
Okay.
But no, I think the Leonard Floyd pick, that is something that you're going to be looking at, a lot of versatility. But once again, what is our identity, which we'll get into later as well.
Okay, fair enough. So we've got Ed Oliver getting the contract extension, Leonard Floyd signing for 1 year here. It is what it is for now. I have to see what this defense looks like in 2023. That's going to tell me whether or not these signings and all the other signings that we made this year are worth anything, right? I'm kind of sitting back on the defense, not happy with what's going on with the offense. I mean, we'll see what Ken Dorsey and his crew can cook up, but I want to get back into, and we kind of like circled around and went out of the way of the series that we've been doing, which is the draft classes that Sean McDermott has been a part of. I found something pretty interesting. I think I'll just make you mad right now.
Is that hard to do?
So I did some digging, and I wanted to see who was available when Sean was hired, because I remember having to convince myself that this would be a pretty good signing, mostly because he was a defensive guy, and I think at the time the trend was offensive guys, and I wanted to have someone that could come in and either make Tyrod Taylor great or come in and put in a scheme that would, either make Tyrod Taylor great or allow us to just bottom out and draft a quarterback that we could, then groom and make great.
I think Tyrod would have been around another year. I'd have been looking at him like you did Ed Oliver. I was so tired of Tyrod Taylor. Really? I didn't care what we had to do to get rid of him. That's why I like Nathan Peterman. I'm like, anybody but Tyrod.
Really?
Because when you look at Tyrod, though, you realize that he was what he was. He was going to get you somewhere, but he wasn't going to get you there. So I was tired of being somewhere. Mm-hmm. I wanted to either, like you said, bottom out or be great. And he was never going to be great in my eyes. Now, if he wanted to stay on as a bridge to the next guy, which would have been okay, but in his instance, it just wasn't working out.
I think that's fair. I think the offense that he had with who's the guy that's in Baltimore or that was in Baltimore?
Roman.
Yeah, Greg Roman. I think being in that offense, that was probably the best scheme that Tyrod would have to kind of maximize his skill set and all that kind of stuff. So I don't think you're wrong in what you're saying. I don't want to say I was indifferent. He was the best option we had at the time. Right. He was a dual threat quarterback. So I could roll with that if we had someone else who would be able to, either do something with him or get him out of here and get someone else in here who can.
Yeah, I think Tyrod was just the kind of guy that was good enough that you weren't going to try to improve on. Right. It seemed like they were set with him every year.
Yeah, well, it seemed like they were stuck because they just didn't have a better option.
I don't think they were seeking one. That's the thing. I think they were like, we can, because remember Rex Ryan always said, we can get there with Tyrod. Yeah, we can get there with Tyrod. Then he got fired.
Yeah.
And then everybody, we can get there with Tyrod. I'm like, no, we can't.
Right.
I mean, you go ahead and get this offense, nah, never mind that. Even with this offense, no. We weren't going to get to Tyrod.
Okay. So these are some of the names. I picked out the notable ones. There were some other ones too when Sean McDermott was hired. There was another Sean out there, man.
There was another Sean.
There's another Sean. Sean McVay.
That's the Sean I knew you were going to say.
Sean McVay was hired the same year that Sean McDermott was hired.
How'd he do?
Well, he's got a Super Bowl ring right now. I think he got to a Super Bowl his, second or third year?
But does he have culture, though?
See, Damn the culture, bro. Like, don't even get me started on culture. Like, okay. We established this already. You draft players that are the same as players that you've had on the team already, and you do it why? It's just like Deion Dawkins. Please tell me, was he not the same player as Cordy Glenn? Same exact player. They came out of college playing the same position, got put in the same position at the pro level, and have played relatively the same.
Right.
We can go look up at the numbers if we want, but they play relatively the same. They are almost the same exact.
There was no drop off.
The only difference is their personality, whether they buy into the system, whether they're culture guys, is the difference. Right. And there's several other players on this team who they're the same exact situation where we had players that were already doing what they do.
Right.
And well, no, we got to get rid of those guys and we got to bring someone else in that is our culture guy. Like
or fumble around and try to tell us that the guy that they got is the culture guy. He's an upgrade. Right. You can't tell me getting rid of Wyatt Teller was a smart move anywhere.
Bruh, is Ed Oliver an upgrade over Marcel Darius?
He's not.
Like, you have the same guy basically because Darius wasn't penetrating all that much. He was getting pushed off the line.
And he could be a one-tech.
Huh?
He could technically have been a one-tech.
Right. And in my opinion, he wasn't even big enough to do that.
Right.
So I just.
Yeah, so you're right. I mean, that's 100%. But when we really get into the meat of this draft thing, we're going to uncover some things, I think.
Okay. Well, hopefully. There was about 3 more names that I got here. Your boy Kyle Shanahan. Mm-hmm. He was available. Yeah.
I got nothing.
I would have took that all day. Of course. I would have taken that all day. Frank Reich.
I mean,
if he had a quarterback.
Yeah.
When he had a quarterback in Philly, he was nice as a coordinator.
Yeah.
He was nice.
I don't think I like Frank Reich only because of the familiarity thing.
Why? Do you understand how much of a hit that would have been?
I mean, how though?
The man is a legend in Buffalo.
That's what I'm saying. But he's a legend in Buffalo. But now it's time for us to get to the quarterback. It's time to get to the yams. I'm trying to get to the yams. I don't need the legend in Buffalo because I don't need a Thurman Thomas being a running back coach like everybody says.
You think his Super Bowl experience, his Super Bowl ring, his experience with that style of offense that he ran in Philly, like you don't think?
But he went with Carson Wentz with 2 other quarterbacks. So I mean. The head coach, offensive coordinator, and Frank Reich were all the quarterbacks.
Was Frank Reich there the whole time that Peterson was there?
I don't know about the whole time. I know he won the Super Bowl with Peterson and who was it? Who was the other one? It was Peterson and Frank Reich's the quarterback coach.
And Nick Foles.
No. The offensive coordinator at the time was who? Because Frank Reich was an offensive. He was a quarterback coach. And then
I think Peterson was it Nick Sirianni?
It might have been Sirianni. Yeah, it was Sirianni.
Okay.
So, I mean, no, I get it. I get the familiarity, the coming back to Buffalo thing, but I just didn't need that narrative. See, for me, I don't. Where I work, I deal with a lot of the alumni, and for them to come back, they're Jesus. They're treated like gold. And what did Frank Reich do when he got the job in Indy? You know, I mean, he had a rough deal. He had a rough deal.
Right, because that owner is just nuts.
Right, like, Irsay is a little different. But my point is, going back to what we were talking about last week, if you're going to give me a guy that I know for a fact can lead a team to the promised land, or somebody I'm familiar with, I'm taking the dude. Do I think Sean McDermott was it? No, not at all. Not at all. But I just didn't think that Frank Reich at the time was a guy to take us to the next level I wanted to get to. And looking back on it now, I still don't feel like he was the guy that we should have had at the time. I understand why people would like Frank Reich. I like Frank Reich. But to me, he's just an offensive version of McDermott in the sense of the culture.
Being old school,
kind of conservative. So, I mean, that one I was okay with not having. And if they would have brought him back, okay. But I was okay with not having that one.
Okay, fair enough. It's okay to disagree.
And it's like, I hate this guy. Why is he here?
Listen, I'm sorry. Okay. So, and last but not least on this list is a trade for Sean Payton. Would you have done that?
Yeah, I would have taken Sean Payton.
I totally would have traded for Sean Payton at that point.
Mm-hmm.
I think what you were facing in terms of the drought that you had and the talent that was out there, taking a guy like Sean Payton and bringing him here to a city that is, and forgive me, I'm not saying this from a non-empathetic position, but the guy came into a situation in New Orleans where the year after he was hired, the city was devastated.
Right.
So
right.
he has experience with cities and city cultures that are, downtrodden, beaten up. Like he just won. Like he just won.
Mm-hmm.
He put up with whatever he had to put up with being there, and he just won. That was a franchise that had been so just soiled for years and years and years and years.
Yeah.
And then he goes there, and now they're a team that's like feared across the league.
Mm-hmm.
So I would have traded for Sean Payton at that point. And I know, okay, hindsight is 2020. For those of you who are listening to this and saying, you know what, it happened already, we got to deal with it. Fine, I get that. I'm not trying to go back and undo the Sean McDermott hiring, but what I am trying to do is, for all those people that are gonna say, well, if you didn't want Sean McDermott, who would you have taken? This is a list of people I would have taken.
Right.
Now, moving forward, we're looking at Sean McDermott's draft classes since he got hired, and I think we made it up to, 2018?
Yeah.
2018?
Yeah.
So let's go to 2018.
Well, before you do that, I wanted to let you, did you know that he was on the Philadelphia Eagles scout team in 99 and 2000?
No, I did not.
So this is the real quick. I'm just going to run this list down to you. Who he had a hand in drafting. 99, first overall, Donovan McNabb. Okay, McNabb was definitely a hit. Then you had Barry Gardner, Doug Brzezinski, John Welborn, Damon Moore, and I'm not even going to go any further in 99. Cecil Martin was one. 2000, you had Corey Simon, Todd Pinkston, Bobby Williams, and Gary Scott. After that, I'm not going to go any further. Who in that list is somebody you had to have besides Donovan McNabb? I mean, Corey Simon was productive.
I mean, Pinkston was decent.
Who's that?
Todd Pinkston.
Pinkston was good, but Pinkston should have been like a number 3 or number 4. He was an outside guy.
I'm sorry, we're on 2019, not
That's what I figured. Yeah, I thought we were the year after.
Yeah, we're on 2019.
And Pinkston was good, but Pinkston wasn't. He wasn't a number 1, number 2.
Yeah, no, he was a good number 2 in my mind. From what I had seen, he was a decent number 2. That was what year was that again? That he was
Pinkston was 2000, and they had, what was it? Pinkston and James Thrash.
James Thrash, yeah, those were some pretty good receivers. I mean, I think they played better because they had Donovan McNabb.
Definitely helped out by the quarterback.
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, for Andy Reid's system and what they were doing, I think those receivers fit the scheme pretty well. So
I just remember they had nothing over the middle. They had nothing intermediate because the guys are too small. Thrash was fast. Pinkston was relatively fast, but when you look at how they draft, and obviously McDermott isn't the only scout, isn't the only person in that organization that has that duty, but your name is attached to things that you've done already. And those draft classes largely were just a bunch of nothing.
Right. So, all right. So draft classes 2019.
Which is really fitting. Look who number 1 is.
Yeah.
Real fitting.
I'm staring at number 2, and I'm about to get up and walk off set.
Well, let's put some context in this. If you go with what Bill Polian said, I think he was relatively respected. He did some good things for organizations.
Right.
He always said your first 2 picks should be starters. Your first and second round should be a starter.
Okay.
3rd through 7th should be best player available. And somewhere in there you need to take a quarterback. That's what Bill Polian said. So in thinking about what he said and looking at the draft class without going through who we could have gotten and who was there, we can go through this exercise now and kind of, what'd you say?
How did I not know okay. Jaquan Johnson was a corner.
I think he was a safety. He really was a safety.
This says corner.
I know, but yeah, I think he was. He was drafted. He was a safety.
Pro Football Reference. I want to give these guys a little credit that they,
They might have drafted him as a corner though, because you remember they can change positions at the draft. So if they say they intend to play this, they're going to put it what they intend to play on here.
Why? I need to know.
Just like Saran Neal was like Saran Neal was a linebacker safety type deal. Jaquan Johnson was a safety.
I need to know what his 40 time was.
4.6.
Why would you 4.69? Why
4.7.
Why are you trying to switch to corner if that was the case?
Because they play a cover. They play cover man. I mean, cover zone. So when you play cover zone, they don't care about the speed as much. Remember McDermott said.
Ain't got time for that.
But McDermott, and I quote, he said he wants guys that can read the play and interpret a play and react. In a zone scheme, you don't have to have a 4-4 guy on corners. He just decided he was going to have Levi Wallace later. He was going to have Jaquan Johnson. He's going to have Saran Neal. He's going to have whoever else. Who else were we talking about at cornerback? So this goes into our coach. This is our guy. He wanted to change the 4.7, 5'10" guy to a cornerback. I didn't do it. I didn't do it.
I'm giving you the Liam Neeson look. I'm looking into your soul.
No, you know what's funny about him, though?
See if you believe this foolishness you're talking about.
Of course I don't. But you know what's funny about it, though?
What?
When I encountered him, I insulted the guy. I'm not gonna lie to you, because it was a situation where I had to get something to him, and he said you can deliver it to One Bills Drive, and I said okay. I said, oh, that's what's up. Are you in for a camp? He was like, yeah, because it was a training camp. He was a rookie. I thought it was like a premier high school camp. Dude, this is a little guy, like a very small guy. So I thought he was going to a all-star high school camp that I didn't hear about. He was like, no, I'm a Bill. I said, my bad. Sorry, man. I did not. I meant no malice, but
no disrespect.
No disrespect, my boy.
No disrespect, sir. He does his shoulders off here. Okay. All right. Well, Ed Oliver was first. Mm-hmm. We got through that painlessly. I don't think we need to go into any more of that. Cody Ford, We don't need to go into that either, do we? No, please, no.
We don't have to go into that either.
God, no. And this is the thing. Like, I don't even understand why Cody Ford wasn't good enough. Like, is there something on tape to where he's an absolute turnstile as a pass blocker? Because I thought they brought him in for run blocking.
They brought him in for run blocking, as they always do. They try to change it to a zone scheme or a pulling scheme where he's not a puller, which is what I'm afraid of with Osiris Torrance too.
He came in as a guard. Mm-hmm. They wanted him to be a tackle.
A tackle, guard. Yeah, they wanted him to be a swing. Tackle, guard.
Okay.
But so let me just interject, because this is draft related.
Okay.
When I look at how you construct a team, I don't want versatility. I want somebody that's great at something.
Right.
If you're going to be a defensive end, I don't care if you play defensive tackle. I want you to be the best DN there is. If you're going to be a tackle, be a tackle. Be a guard. I don't care if you can play all 5 positions. I don't care if you wrestle. I don't care what funds you have at your hometown.
Just be dominant at something.
Dominate, especially in the second round when we traded up for you.
Right. Agreed. I think it was nonsense to think that this guy was going to come in playing his whole college career at guard and he's going to be a swing tackle.
Right.
And really what this reminds me of is what they've done with so I did some digging at sidebar. I did some digging. Brandon Beane was the assistant GM in Carolina from 2012 to 2017. I don't know how many people know that, but he was the assistant GM from 2012 to 2017. His notable picks in the first, I would say, 2 to 4 years. I'll just go through them real quick. These are the notable picks, right? Now, this is really quick. All of Brandon Beane's drafts from 2012 to 2017, only one of them has more than 5 picks. Just one. Which was really surprising to me, and of course it wasn't surprising to you at all, because you've seen the guy trade up and all that kind of. But notable picks: 2012, Luke Kuechly.
Of course.
Okay. Amini Silatolu, guard. Mm-hmm. Very solid blocker. Mm-hmm. Josh Norman in the 5th round. Mm-hmm. That's a pretty good draft. Just that, like, they only had five picks that
3
year.
out of 5. That's 60%.
So you got 3 starters right off of that.
Right.
2013 is where it gets even better. Starlo Tulele, defensive tackle. That's their first overall pick.
And we want to remind you, he was good in Carolina. He was good.
100%. He was a beast in Carolina.
I don't want people to say, oh, look what he did.
No,
it was different.
He was a beast in Carolina. Much different. For sure. And the pick right after that in the second round, K'Wan Short.
See?
They got both those guys in the same draft. Ended up being both their starting defensive tackles. Right. In the same draft. Now, that actually worked. As opposed to the Boogie Basham and Greg Rousseau.
Right. But you got to realize that K'Wan Short was a run stuff and could play the 3, where Lutulele was a 1 or 0 tech.
Right.
It works perfectly. You don't, like you said, with Basham and Rousseau, they're both run stuffers.
Right.
There's no nuance to that. You're a run stuffer. That's it. So it's a big difference there.
Yeah. After that, AJ Klein, which at that time he was a solid weak side linebacker. Solid linebacker. And
to be fair by AJ Klein too, though, that position is almost obsolete. You know, when he played what, off ball, and he was a good run stuffer. But now with the advent of this nickel defense, that position's almost gone.
Right. Exactly. And then this might not be notable to some people. I thought it was notable just because of the style of running back he was, and then who they ended up drafting later on. Kenjon Barner.
Okay.
Kenjon Barner. I think he was their 5th or 6th round pick. He might have even been the 7th. And then 2014, Kelvin Benjamin. Now, out of college, Kelvin Benjamin was a beast.
He had the tools. He was a raw guy with the nuance, but he had the size and the tools to get it done. He didn't have the head for it, but he had everything else.
Right. And I think in the system that they played at the time, that was enough. It was enough. Coney Ely, who was a good defensive end, made some big plays in the Super Bowl that they played in. Guard Trey Turner, who ended up being a great guard. I think he was a Pro Bowler at one point.
Trey Turner was good. Yeah, he was definitely good.
Safety Trey Boston was a good safety for them.
He got money.
So you talking about their first 3 drafts are like guys, like dudes. You know what I'm saying? And then 2015, not bad. They had Shaq Thompson was their 1st round pick.
Okay.
Devin Funchess, I think he was their 2nd round pick.
He was.
No, he might have been their 4th. I'm sorry, he might have been the 4th.
Yeah.
And then Darrell Williams. Darrell Williams was later in that draft.
Okay. Later in that draft?
Huh?
You said later in that draft?
Yeah, he was later in that draft. Darrell Williams was somewhere between 5 and 7.
Wow.
Right. And he ended up being a starter for them. You know what I mean? So it starts going downhill after that. Obviously, 2016, they get Vernon Butler, who was, decent. James Bradbury and Daryl Worley, that was the year after the Super Bowl.
Vernon Butler became a Bill. James Bradbury almost became a Bill. Who else did you have?
Vernon Butler did become a Bill.
Yeah.
Daryl Worley.
He was a Bill.
Daryl Worley was a Bill?
Yeah, remember?
No.
Yeah, he was a Bill.
Wow.
He actually played in one game, I believe, but he was practice squad. They picked him up. And because they were trying to get who's the second guy you said again? I'm sorry, Bradbury.
Yep.
They couldn't get because he cost too much. So they ended up going to get Worley and signed up to the practice squad. He got called up. So he was on the Bill. See, there's a correlation here. You said, what year is this?
Yeah.
16, right?
Yeah.
Correlation is fresh in their minds.
Yep. And then obviously 2017, Christian McCaffrey, Curtis Samuel, Taylor Moton, and for those of you who want some trivia for later on when you're at the bar, Harrison Butker, the kicker that plays for the does he still play for the Chiefs, or maybe they?
I'm not sure if he's still there, but yeah.
No, he might not. He was drafted by Carolina.
Really?
Drafted by Carolina and somehow found his way into Kansas City for Super Bowls.
See, I would take those drafts. You can 100%. See where they're going with these. Ours, you just can't see where they're going.
Right. And what that really tells me, I mean, obviously Brandon Beane was the assistant GM at the time, but he was still responsible for setting up the draft boards. He was, involved in the pro scouting and all that kind of stuff, and even college scouting. So he had a hand in all of this stuff. He even had a hand in with pro personnel in signing contract signings. So he had his hand in just about everything that you could as an assistant GM. And these are the drafts that they pumped out. Now, I don't know who the actual GM for Carolina was, but this is pretty good. I would take this.
Yeah.
Right?
Because to go further, you got to look at what they did. I mean, we're not going to go through it right now, but you got to look at what they did in free agency as well.
Right.
Because and Bean said this, he said it in his press conference this week. He said, guys get up in arms. Some fans say, well, you should have did this, you should have did that, you should have did this in the draft. But we got things down the pipe in free agency. And that's what he was talking about when he was talking about Leonard Floyd. He said, we had things coming down the pipe. We talked to him before the draft. But we could offer this number, and he talk this number and this guy, and that makes sense for us. But he said all that, and he said that, they revisited, and there was some mutual interest from both sides after the draft, because some guys didn't get what they thought they were going to get in the market, and they said, I'd rather come to Buffalo. But that goes to show that just because the draft doesn't look like it's a perfect draft, doesn't mean that it was bad. Right. Because they have something else that you don't know in the back of their mind already brewing. And I believe Bean on that.
Yeah.
But you look at the Bills draft of 2017 before Bean came, that was probably the best draft we had, but Whaley was here.
Right.
So, Tre'Davious White, Zay Jones, Deion Dawkins, Matt Milano, just that alone, that's all you need to know.
Right.
That's all you need to know.
Yeah. It seems more like Sean McDermott and Brandon Bean have benefited from the work of other people more so than the work that they've put into this thing.
Collectively, yes.
So let's get back to the 2019 draft picks for the Buffalo Bills. Mm-hmm. After Cody Ford in the third round, we had Devin Singletary.
I'm going to be so honest here. So honest.
Please.
I mean, I'm not gonna crusade. I'm so glad he's gone. However, he wasn't as bad as I made him out to be. Singletary just wasn't.
Really?
Singletary was not a starter to me, on a good team. He was like Clyde Edwards-Helaire, which is going to not be a starter, or if he isn't even a starter anymore, he might be number 3 now. Okay. But Singletary had a purpose. It just wasn't to be what they projected him and what they pushed him to us as. He wasn't the number 1 guy in a bell cow sense. Mm-hmm. If you're in a running back by committee, sure, but you can't put him with Frank Gore. You can't put him with whoever else we had on the team at the time and say, yeah, this is your running back room. I didn't like it. So, the fact that Singletary had average 6 yards a carry or whatever it was, but I did the math. Any game where if you can look it up, any game where Singletary had more than 10 carries, he was down about 4% or 4 yards per carry.
Yeah.
If he carried the ball 8 or less times, his yards per carry was like 7. He had 2 games in one season in a row where he was averaging 18, 19 yards a carry because he only had it 5 times. So that skews that number, especially when you don't get the carries like everybody else. Right. So was he great? No, he wasn't great. Was he bad? No, he did his job. But his job wasn't, like we said about Tyrod, his job was not going to put you over the top. Right. It was just good enough. And that's evident by the fact he's a 4-7 running back, but you're bringing in what? You brought in Zach Moss. You brought in other big guys because you didn't think that he was going to get that first down. You had Josh Allen running for 3rd and 1s on the goal line. What is Singletary's purpose? I don't care if he can miss in a phone booth. What does that mean to me? Because once he gets in open space, somebody's going to track him down. He's not fast enough.
Right. Anytime you have a 5'9" running back who runs a 4.6, go home.
And is barely 200 pounds.
Just go home.
Yeah.
Just go home. Even with the Zach Moss signing, 5'9", 200 pounds.
It didn't make, but he was somehow faster.
Right. And that's the thing that killed me is like, this dude is the same size, heavier, but he's faster than the guy who's supposed to have the quicker feet. Right. And has shown better short area quickness. Yeah. You know what I mean? So
it didn't translate.
No, not at all. I don't understand the draft pick. If anything, I could see them saying maybe we could get him faster in the league, which is possible.
Right.
If the player is willing to do the work. Now, I didn't see on the field that big of a difference in his speed. Mm-mm. Like even with the Broncos game where he broke out like for a 40-yard run or something like that.
It took forever. It took forever.
Exactly.
He was going and going.
It's like players who had already dove and missed it at the line of scrimmage had time to catch up and try to tackle him again and got
and this is not exaggeration. This is no exaggeration. This really took place.
Yeah, yeah, it did. This is what, 3 years ago that this happened?
Yeah.
But yeah, so okay, Devin Singletary, like this whole draft is after Ed Oliver and even with Ed Oliver is really seeming like a just colossal waste of time.
Didn't make sense.
Yeah, none of it did. None of it did. I will say, I did enjoy the Dawson Knox pick.
Yeah.
I think 6'4", 250, athletic, got some decent speed. Seeing him come in his rookie season and make some of the plays that he was making, yes, I'll take it. I'll take that all day long. He had the attitude, and he could get better at catching, and there's different things that he could do to be better. And eventually he did get better. So I would say, to me right now, Dawson Knox is probably the best pick of this whole entire draft.
Absolutely, but with the
Fight
caveat,
me if y'all want.
Absolutely, I agree. But with the caveat of how they're going to use him, because you paid the man $14 million a season, and you decided, screw him, I'm not playing, I'm not throwing the ball no more.
Right.
You're going to block, which is so McDermott. It's so Billsy. I'm going to give you all this money and don't do what you're good at. Don't do what you're supposed to do.
Exactly.
Do something else.
Exactly. And it seems that that's been the trend the entire time that Sean and Bean have been here. Is we want flexible guys, we want guys that are multiple, and we want look,
culture guys.
Just say that you want guys with size that can play positions that they don't need to be in.
Right.
That's really what it boils down to. You want the size, but you want these guys with size to be able to do things that guys who are smaller than them can do.
Right.
Or you want the guys who are smaller and quicker to be able to do things that the bigger guys with size can do. Like, just go back to the drawing board and put these guys back in the square holes that they're supposed to be in.
Exactly.
Like, it's just anyway. Voshon Joseph.
He's a good practice squad player.
For a 5th round pick?
No, I'm saying that's what he was. That was his potential. A good practice squad player. I'm right there with you.
Okay.
I'm right there with you. But there was nothing about Voshon Joseph.
Okay.
That Mel Kiper said the Bills knocked it out of the park with that one.
Yeah, you're right.
The Bills knocked it out. They got it. They got it right. McShay never said that.
Oh my gosh, we need to hurry up and get through this. This is nonsense. So, can we just blow through this and get to 2020? Is that okay?
Unless it's somebody we want to talk about, yeah.
No, definitely not.
We need to talk. We need to run through the names, but we don't have to talk about everybody.
Okay, perfect. Round 6 was Jaquan Johnson, cornerback out of Miami of Florida.
Daryl Johnson, yeah.
Yeah, picks round 7. Sorry, pick 225. Daryl Johnson, defensive end out of North Carolina A&T.
6'7" practice. What was he? 6'7" gunner.
But when he came in, he could play.
No, he could play, but they put him on special teams.
I never understood.
They used him. He was a good special teams player.
He was a good special teams player, but he was a good defense. Like, he was one of those guys where if you just gave him time on the field, gave him reps,
he would be Rousseau. But let's not keep Daryl Johnson. Let's go get Rousseau. Who's Daryl Johnson?
Right.
A more expensive one.
Like, no, we don't want to resign this guy to a 7-year contract for.
Right. Right.
What? But anyway, all right. And then last but not least in that draft, we have tight end Tommy Sweeney,
who is now a Giant,
and is probably going to put up more stats than Dawson Knox this year. I'm optimistic for.
No fault of Dawson Knox though. No fault of Dawson Knox.
Of course not. All right, moving right along.
So I in 2020, I just want to say, just to make this draft feel a little more palatable.
There's nothing I love.
It is. Number 14. We got 14 with our first pick. Can we just say that? 14 was our first pick.
I don't know.
If you don't take that, it's not going to happen. You must have shut it down, right? If you don't take that, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen.
The disclaimer is what does it for me. Like, the second you got to take out a disclaimer, just throw the whole thing away. Like,
that's
seriously.
what I did. Well, Tyler Bass, but outside of that.
Okay, I will say this. Knowing what I know about some of the players on this list right now, I don't think this is a bad draft. I just think it was a poorly used draft, so to speak, right? AJ Epinesa comes in from Iowa. He's the second round pick, 54th overall, and in Iowa he was more of your 3-4 defensive end style.
He was 283 pounds at Iowa.
Right, 6'6", 283. Now, if it was me, I would have said, you know what? He's 6'6", 283. We could probably get him to about 300 and let him play D tackle. Or get him to 293 for that matter and let him play D tackle.
Let him stay 283 and not let him drop down to 255 like they did to try to make him a speed rusher.
Well, that's why I said move him to D tackle, because if he's at D tackle, he's gaining weight. He's not losing anything.
Wait, but my point is, if you just left him alone, you drafted him to be a run stuffer. He wasn't a pass rusher. If you'd have left him alone and let him do what he did, like we said earlier, do what you do best.
Yeah, I could see that. So he would be at that left end spot, and I think he had enough strength and power to work with those bigger right tackles.
Because what happens is you don't have to re-sign Shaq Lawson. You probably don't have to draft Greg Rousseau. You don't need Carlos Basham. So that's 3 guys. That's money right there that you don't need if you'd have left him. Because what happened when he got on that program? He lost too much weight, remember?
Yeah.
He couldn't stop losing weight. So that tells you right there, leave him alone.
Right.
He was a pinnacle of his craft in college for a reason.
Right.
Why change it?
Well, because we like guys that are multiple, and we want guys that can do different things.
Right.
And, we want to be able to switch players around.
And to your point, what does Greg Rousseau do? Rousseau does what? He plays D tackle too.
Yeah. On third downs,
this guy wouldn't even have to go to 290 to be a D tackle if that's the case. Because Rousseau is what, 245, 250?
No, he's 250. Yeah.
They say, he's listed at 250, but that's him doing what I did to try to put on weight. He's not really 250. He's like 240, 245.
Wow.
He's not big at all.
And he's not that quick for being 6'6", 240.
And that's my point. When they drafted him, they thought he was going to be a pass rusher. You don't have to be. He's got long arms. You set the edge. But guess what? You doubled down and wasted a draft pick on what? Boogie Basham. Who was what? Wasn't he about 280 in college as well?
Boogie Basham?
Yeah. About 275. He was pretty big.
Yeah, it's 275. Yeah.
He could have been your 3-tech behind Ed Oliver. That's what I thought they were going to do when we talked about it. I thought he was going to be a 3-tech behind Ed Oliver.
Yeah. That's a good point. That's a great point. It's just gross misuse of talent here.
It is.
Zach Moss, I think with them now moving to his own run scheme, Zach Moss would have been great.
He would have been great.
With his size, his speed, his power, he would have been great in this scheme.
Especially if you look at spelling James Cook. This would have been his contract season.
Oh my gosh, I would have taken that all day long.
So instead you go get Latavius Murray and Damian Williams from the Patriots.
Yeah, Williams. Yeah.
Which they might be fine, but you already had the resource. Harris.
Yes.
You already had the resource.
Right.
You went out and you cut this guy. You went out and got somebody else.
They traded him away.
Well, you traded him away.
Yeah.
You went out and got somebody. Use your resources. He wasn't horrible.
Yep.
You could have worked with it. But instead, you would have had 1 year of cheap labor, but you go out and you spend all this money. Luckily, you got 2 guys for vet minimum. Next, please.
128th overall in round 4. We got my boy, Gabe Davis.
He was a hit.
100%.
He was a hit.
100%.
Where is he a hit? I don't know yet, but he was a hit. Is he a number 2 or is he a slot?
Well, in Dayball's scheme, he was a hit for sure. I mean, you're talking about a guy who's been here 3 years already, played in 47 games. The man's got 118 catches for 1,984 yards.
That's a good year, by the way.
20 touchdowns in 3 years.
1984 is a good year. But
it's a very good year.
But honestly, yeah, the reason why I say where is he a hit, I'm not sure yet, is because I don't think that he was ready to be the full-time number 2 yet. But I also think he's versatile where he can go into the slot. He could play outside. He could spell dick. He can do a lot of things.
Yeah.
He also was a good push man, when Josh was diving. So he had a place on the team. So definitely was a hit.
Yeah. All right. The man we never got to know.
Right.
Jake Fromm.
Yeah, he was good for
taken from us.
What, the preseason? He had a couple of good plays.
I just had to get a dad joke out. I'm sorry.
Huh?
You didn't even hear it. Never mind. We good. Hopefully nobody else heard that either.
It's all right. It's okay. I overtalked you. But no, I think, see, this was something I said, okay, good. We finally drafted a quarterback. Because, like I said last week, I just want to get somebody in here that has some kind of skill that may get picked up, may not.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have taken a quarterback in the 5th round, but at this point, if you look at what came after him, they really weren't going for much more after that anyway.
Yeah. All right, that takes us to round 6, 188th overall, Tyler Bass. I like him.
Yep,
I don't
Bass
think
Magic.
anything's wrong with that. We don't need to say anything. The man has been a solid kicker for 3 years.
Definitely. You know, and it showed once he got a good holder how good a kicker he really was. Because at first we were kind of down on him because he was missing, you know, his accuracy was up. But once he got a good holder and he got familiar with him, it worked.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to be, this is going to tear me to shreds.
Cue the WWE smoke and the Undertaker music.
This is going to tear me to shreds, but.
So, your boy, with the 207th overall pick in the 2020 draft, in the 6th round, the Bills select Isaiah Hodgins.
Isaiah Hodgins to me, I'm.
It's the praying hands, bro. It's the praying.
I'm sitting here thinking to myself, how can I put this? Isaiah Hodgins, every year, they said in training camp was actually performing better than Gabriel Davis. Every year, this guy has shown he had hands. Every year he got hurt. I will give him that. But when he got into a game in his last season in Buffalo, he showed you what he could do.
Yeah.
And to me, what he could do was at least spell Gabe Davis. I want to see Jake Kumaro do this. I want to see Kumaro do this.
Why do you keep going at Jake Kumaro?
Because Kumaro took Hodgins' spot.
No, we don't know that. We don't know that.
No, Bean said it. It came down to special teams.
Really?
It came down to special teams. That's why. And they said the reason why. Well, how can I put
Who else did we have on the wide receiver depth chart?
I don't know.
This is 2020, so we had. I think we had just gotten Beasley, right, in free agency.
Yeah, Beasley, yeah. But we're talking about 2022, though. We're talking about 22 when they cut him, or when they put him down on practice squad again, which was ridiculous because Kumaro was hurt. He was already hurt, and you put him down on practice squad, and he got poached. That's crazy to me. The guy went out there. I don't even. What did he have last? Do you have what he had last year?
Who?
Hodgins. What is? Just click right there.
Let me see.
Splits. Go to splits. 2022.
No.
Scroll down. Okay. Down. All right. Where are we? Go down more. I forget it. I think he was averaging.
I'll find it for you.
Yeah, he was averaging. 4 or so catches for 50 yards. Mm-hmm. And then I actually picked him up on my fantasy team at the end of last season, and he blew up. He was getting 5 to 7 catches. He was their number 2. Now you tell me right now why you would pick that over your and when you really want to really expound upon that point, how important is a kickoff these days? How many times does it get run back?
Of the game.
Yeah, and that's my point. He couldn't cover kicks. So what? How often is he gonna have to? You need to tell me that you couldn't find somebody else, Jaquan Johnson, you couldn't find Cam Lewis, you couldn't find Saran, you couldn't find somebody else to run down the field?
Right.
Especially when you don't have a lot of weight. You brought Cole Beasley and Smoke back. Why? Because you have a deficit. You're at a deficit in that room, but you get rid of an asset who's performing. It makes zero sense to me. And to the day I die, I'm not going to understand it. I'm not going to like it. And nobody's going to make me like it. All right? Nobody's going to talk me out of this one.
He has spoken.
I've spoken.
So 2022, 48 targets, 37 catches, 392 yards, and 4 touchdowns in
a 10.5 yard per reception. It's the first down every time he sees the ball.
10 games. 10 games.
77% catching. Yards per target, 8.1.
Yeah.
4 touchdowns in 10 games. But we got Kumaro. And even further than that, let me tell you.
Is Jake still on this team?
I think so.
Oh,
even
man.
further than that.
Jake, I'm sorry, man.
Why is he on this team? Because Josh Allen was familiar with him. Josh Allen was familiar with Jake Kumaro.
Did they play together in college?
No, because he played, I don't know where they played Tiddlywink somewhere. I don't know. but what breaks my heart about this whole deal is when you look at, I pray to God, I hope this story is not true. I hope it's not true, but do you guys know the story behind how we got Von Miller?
Please release this thing. Please release this thing. Please.
We got Von Miller after Brandon Beane noticed he was playing noticed that Josh Allen was playing with Von Miller in a golf tournament. So he texted him and said, yo, go recruit Von Miller. He said, all right, on one condition, that you sign Matt Barkley. Von Miller's on the team, Matt Barkley's on the team. How does this make sense?
So as long as I get what I want,
I'll give you what you want.
I'll try to help the Bills out.
But do you realize Josh doesn't even realize you are hurting yourself because you are our offense. You're keeping guys around that are not making anybody better.
Right.
You know, so Von Miller's going to recruit half the Rams team. You got whatever else happening.
Barkley is still with the team, ain't he?
Yeah.
The man hasn't played in one game since when?
What guy with that tenure signs to be a practice squad player? And he's not been poached. What does that tell you? He's never been taken off this team. What does that tell you?
He's the forbidden word. Trash.
But when you look at our undrafted free agents, they never bring quarterbacks in. They never bring any competition for him.
Yeah.
But you bring 6 running backs in when you already got 5. Why? Why? I don't get it.
It just looks from the outside like you're just scrambling now.
Yeah.
You're just scrambling now because the first 4 drafts that you've had have not gone so well.
Right. And
you've got what? From those 4 drafts, you had 2, 3 Pro Bowlers, tops, 4.
Yeah.
If you're counting Steph Diggs.
Yeah. You have to. You have to.
You don't have to.
Just because I feel better inside when you do.
Okay. All right. We'll let you have the warm feelings.
Oh, thank you. I wish the Bills let me have one thing. Shoot. They did in 2023, which we talked about already. But let's see. Moving.
In 2023?
Yeah. You know, my number 1 guy was Dalton Kincaid, and my number 2 was Osiris Torrance. So
okay.
So I finally, after 7 years of these guys, get what I want.
I thought you were talking about your boy Wallace, man. That to me was like.
Who are you talking about? What you talking about, Willis? You talking about my boy Levi?
I'm talking about. You didn't have to say his first name.
My man Levi? You
didn't have to say his
Hold on, just because keep talking about 2021 while I find something here. Because it has to be shown. It has to be shown.
Okay, and the guy that is most famous for botching a game-winning interception, your boy Dane Jackson. Was it Dane? No, that was
Cam.
That was Cam.
That was Cam.
Yeah. All right. Well,
which is still my boy because he went to UB.
Listen, for a 7th round pick to come in and do what he's done so far, it's semi-admirable. But
what's hilarious about Dane Jackson? When people talk about the cornerback room, that's the name they forget. Every time. They forget about Dane. I think they did it today on the radio. You know, it's like, don't forget about Dane. Like, dang, he's still here. Oh, yeah, he is still here. But, yeah, he's on the team, and he keeps making it. And he might be the starter because of what I'm hearing.
Benford beat him out.
Benford beat him out, and Benford might beat out Elam. And if that happens, this exercise is complete. This is it. Because... Let me pull up what Bean said about Elam.
Right, I'm going to 2021.
You do that, so this is what he said. He likes to preach sustained success. He said, how do you do that in regards to age players on 1-year contracts? He said, Kyer Elam needs to translate and be more consistent in practice. So you drafted your number one overall, and you traded up for him, didn't you?
This man made plays in the playoffs.
He made plays in the playoffs, but he's intermittent, I guess. I guess he's not consistent.
What? Every game that he's played in, he's made a play.
I thought he was fine. And plus what? He was a first-year guy. So you're allowed to make mistakes, right?
Right.
Devin Singletary led the league in fumbles 2 years straight, right? But he still got to play. So why are you picking and choosing?
Devin Singletary has been fumbling since he was born.
Right.
Let's not play around with those stats versus what Elam has put up. Like, Elam has made impact plays.
I know.
In almost every game that he's played in.
He's been good.
Right.
The only thing I can say about that situation is Christian Benford has been good as well.
Right.
So, I mean, I guess I can see that, but my point is they always pick and choose who does what. But see, that goes into before Josh got his contract. Josh fumbled how many times? How many bonehead interceptions? How many times do you think he got pulled? Never. But when you go to James Cook, who fumbles his first ever carry, you sit him down. When you get Zach Moss, who fumbles, you sit him down. Devin Singletary don't get sat. He didn't get sat down that often. He should have. Gabe Davis dropped the ball. He didn't get sat down. He should have. I'm sure one of the offensive linemen missed a block. Did they get pulled? No. So why pick and choose?
There's just no logic. There's no clear logic to these decisions.
No.
It's almost as if there's more emotion involved in these decisions than there is logic.
Yep. And you got to, as a good coach, you got to manage your emotions.
Like, let me get this straight. Jake Kumaro can get a position on special teams. Matt Barkley can get paid millions of dollars to sit on the bench and be on the practice squad.
Yep.
But Elam, your first overall pick,
Yep.
can't get in the game because he's not consistent in practice?
He's got to look over his shoulder for what? For what?
Like, why did you pick him? Like, you had to have known what his practice habits would be when you drafted the guy.
And furthermore, Elam wasn't a first round talent because he was raw coming out of college. They said this was gonna happen.
Right.
So you traded to get the guy. You poop on him. You don't give him any kind of. You gave him no rope. No rope. Why?
So
I don't get it.
I remember this conversation coming up. There was a presser that Bean was in where he was talking about trying not to put too much pressure on Elam.
Right.
We don't want to put too much pressure on him. So it's okay to not throw him in there because you don't want to put pressure on him, but it's also okay to let someone else beat him out.
Right. That was drafted behind him in the same year.
That was drafted 5 rounds behind the guy.
From Villanova.
Like that is the fiscal implications of those 2 draft picks alone.
You're right.
Is enough to make you say, wait a second,
right.
why is this guy sitting the bench?
Yeah.
Like, I could understand if my team was so stacked with Pro Bowlers and that was the only position that I needed to solidify to make a Super Bowl. Then fine, I want the best guy out there because I don't want no weaknesses out there.
Right.
But you didn't have that.
Mm-mm.
And you still don't have that.
No.
So for me to look at that and say, like, where's the logic in that decision?
There isn't any.
There can't be. There can't be.
And because you said fiscal ramifications, let's go back to the 2021 draft where we left off. In terms of Greg Rousseau and Boogie Basham, after a year removed from taking AJ Epinesa. So you invested 3 of your top resources.
Only 2 are allowed on the field at the same time.
Exactly. And not even that. Now that you got Von Miller, and now that you got what's his name? You got Leonard Floyd. So
you still got Shaq Lawson.
Shaq Lawson.
It's like, what are you doing?
You just re-signed Shaq Lawson.
Like, which one of these guys are not going to make the team?
I heard Shane Ray is not going to make the team. That's the one. That's the one they're saying.
Oh no! Like,
Right.
I mean, Boogie Basham. What you
Maybe trading him, I guess, but I don't know what you didn't display him at all. Let's watch him in preseason what he does. If he plays a lot, they're trying to showcase him. But just going into this draft, this is the most arrogant draft I've ever seen in my life. When you know you're up against the cap next year, you know Josh Allen's coming up. You know you got to make all these moves with money. You got Steph Diggs who's he was an All-Pro that year, so you know you got to pay him again.
Right.
But you go ahead and draft 2 defensive ends that do the same thing. You draft 2 tackles who are the same thing. Tommy Doyle was out of the MAC, so you may as well just say that he was a swing guy.
Yeah.
You know, a project because he's out of the MAC. You know, Spencer Brown played 7-on-7, was a tight end in high school, and played left tackle or right tackle. So, and then Marquez Stevenson, what was that about?
The man had enough speed to get to wherever he wanted to get.
He had speed, but he didn't have the size, and he didn't have the work ethic. He didn't have anything else but the speed. So he was just flash in the pan. He didn't even get on the field in special teams.
Nope.
And that's what they thought it was going to be. So we'll move on to DeMar Hamlin. Solid pickup. I'll say DeMar Hamlin was a solid.
Yeah.
Removed from everything that went on with him.
The more he played, the better he got. I will say that.
This has nothing. You got to think about it. When he's on the field, he's starting, but who was his counterpart? 1 week is Cam Lewis. 1 week is Jaquan Johnson. 1 week is Cam Lewis. He ain't never practiced as a safety. In college, he never played safety.
Right.
That was his first ever game playing safety. And DeMar Hamlin, there's 2 who's trying to figure it out together. But my point is, when I talk about how they built this team, it's arrogant because you got to think about it. Why are we in a roster the cap hell we're in now? Because they keep going to overpay these free agents. But why do you do that?
DeMar Hamlin is going to get re-signed.
Yeah.
We know this.
But
Spencer Brown is probably going to get re-signed.
But those are fine because they're young. But when you go get your older guys, you go get these guys that are 30 plus and you're trying to sign them to 1 year deals, what are you doing?
No, what I'm trying to say is DeMar Hamlin and Spencer Brown are not guys that would go to some other team and start.
Got you. Understood, yeah.
And these are guys that are going to get re-signed here.
Right.
And then they can't even start anywhere else.
Right.
So again, if it's kind of like we're killing ourselves from both sides.
Right.
We're either signing old guys to ridiculously large contracts
because they can't draft.
Right, because you can't draft, and the guys that you do draft, you're going to re-sign them because they're culture guys, and you're trying to build a young nucleus with these guys. But these guys wouldn't start on any other team in the league, except maybe the Texans, maybe.
The Texans, yeah.
You know what I mean? But
or somebody that knows how to use them.
Well, yeah, okay.
You know,
fine.
like I'll just say that because
I mean, even Marquise Goodwin went to the 49ers and was pretty darn good.
Well, that's what I'm saying. You look at like a Wyatt Teller, who they kept alternating him on and off the field when he played here, but he went to Cleveland and he worked with the right guy, and look at him now. If you get in the right situation, the right system, and you have the right coach, who knows what you could be? Everybody's not going to be like that, but these guys are they're not finished products.
Right.
But with us, they are.
Right, exactly.
You know, and let's keep going. Let's get this over with.
Yeah, we're almost through it here.
Yeah, I don't care what the time it takes. Let's get this done.
All right. So we're working towards a point here now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Rashad Wildgoose, this was a good player.
Mm-hmm.
This was a good player. You let him make it to your practice squad, and he got snatched up.
Mismanaged.
Like, anyway.
Yeah, it's mismanaged. Right, if you get somebody like that, he played relatively well, and you had to know, you had to have intel that he was going to get pulled.
You had to. Just and the only reason I could see them doing something like that with that knowledge is if they knew that they weren't going to keep him on anywhere but the practice squad,
right?
And they put him there so that he can get another opportunity with another team. Now, at the time, you have. Who at corner?
Was this?
This is 2021. So you got Trey White. You
Levi.
got Dane Jackson.
Levi.
You have
Levi Wallace
at the number 2 spot, who seemed to be gifted the job like that. Like, can I just be clear about this? Like, this is what's driving me nuts about Levi Wallace. Like, I've never gotten the amount of love that man got from this team. Every single time, from the year that he won the job against an old aging corner who could barely stand on 2 feet. Now all of a sudden you got this guy, this great story coming in, playing corner, and he just happens to be at the right place at the right time. Yeah, because he got burnt and he's catching up to try and make the play after the player already catches the ball. The idea is to stop the catch. The idea is to pick the catch. The idea is to eliminate the play from happening, not to always be in the right position to try and make a tackle. I don't understand how this guy kept being in competitions with guys he had no business being in competition with. It was either some rookie in the late rounds who wasn't going to beat him, or it was some old burnt out corner that was going to come here and try and just make a team. And these are the guys that they wanted to be at the number 2 spot. And again, I am not an NFL player. I've never played at the pro level. Forgive me for anybody who's offended by what I'm saying, but my judgments, my criticisms are about players relative to their peers. So for anybody who wants to come at me for that, see that explanation, okay? Levi Wallace does not deserve any credit from me whatsoever. He will never get it because every single time he had to be pressed into a competition, he was gifted the opportunity because of the lack of competition. So with that said,
I got nothing to say because I like Levi. Throw it at. I still like Levi. Levi Wallace was graded out as at least an average cornerback. Now, this is the caveat. Now, if you're mad about Levi, then this is what you got to ask yourself.
Let's call Pittsburgh and see how they feel about him right now. The money that they just gave the guy, he's basically their number 1 corner.
I know he didn't get that much though. He got about $5 million. Do what we just getting here.
Anything is too much at this point. He needs to be on somebody's practice squad, just barely making it.
Well, let's see. Levi Wallace had 47 tackles. He had. So he had a 55% completion percentage. And let's see.
For the way he plays, bro, he needed to be a safety.
4 interceptions, 6 pass breakups. So, yeah, I'll give you, okay, he should have been a safety. But why didn't they recognize that? That's the thing. We said that. I like Levi. I didn't say it had to be a corner, but who did they bring in to try to usurp him? Who did they bring in? Well, Dane Jackson?
You just making my point for
Josh
me now.
Norman? No, I'm with you. Josh Norman?
Right.
What was the guy's name? Kevin Johnson or whatever?
Kevin Johnson from the Texans.
Who was usurping Levi?
Exactly.
They knew this.
Exactly.
They're comfortable. Yep. They're not, what did we say last week? They're not uncomfortable. Right. You got to get uncomfortable to be better.
Right. So, last but not least, in 2021, let's just keep it moving.
Another guy that got poached. Let's put it like that.
Yeah, Jack Anderson, 236 overall. Where did he go?
He went to the Eagles. The Eagles pulled him. He played. He actually played a couple of games for the Eagles, but I mean, more so than not, they had a better line, and they saw some of him we didn't, evidently, because we put him on a practice squad.
Right.
So. Let's move on to 2022. We talked about Kyer kind of ad nauseum, so let's just go past that one.
Yeah,
unless you got more on that one.
No. Okay, yeah.
We'll say going into what Bill Polian said, your first 2 picks should be starters. Kyer should have been a starter. James 100%. Cook should have been a pretty good starter.
Like, just thinking about the experience that they could have gotten from both the struggles and the successes in year 1. Mm-hmm. They need that time to be out on the field in order to get a feel for the game.
Absolutely.
Like, players nowadays come in with and not all players.
Right.
But from what I've seen, players are coming in with a mindset of, that running back mentality. I need reps. I need to be in the game. I need to get a feel for how guys are playing me. I need to get a feel for how they're trying to beat blocks to get to me. I need to get a feel for how they're, you know what I mean? How it all sets up. Once I get into the game flow, now I'm in the zone. I can go. Right? And I think we saw that later on in the year. The more playing time that Kyer Elam got, he started to make more plays.
I think too what it was with Kyer, they played a lot more man at the end of the year, and that's his strong
definitely
suit.
A man guy.
So he's a press cover guy, and they actually decided to play to his strength at that point in time.
Right. I don't think they had any choice at that point. Secondary was so beat up.
There was nothing.
Trey White was not the same guy.
Right.
So. James Cook at our second round pick, 63rd overall. I mean, the guy's a stud. In my mind, I love his play.
I think
he's just a stud.
I think so.
He always turned something from nothing, and he seems to.
Yeah, at worst, he was still getting the same carries, the same yardage that Singletary was getting.
Right.
I mean, even his bad carries, he was still getting 4 or 5 a carry.
Exactly.
Then he ripped one, and he was out there.
Right.
He was gone.
And that's the thing that I love the most about this player. Yeah, he's a little bit smaller as a back, but once he makes it into the open field, you gotta struggle to catch this guy. Like you probably not gonna get him if you're a step behind him.
Yeah, I think with him, the thing that separates him from Singletary was that they asked him to play to his size. They didn't try to make him something he's not, and that's something uncharacteristic of this regime. They always try to make you something that you're not. So for James Cook, hopefully he builds on what he did last year.
Right. And then the most perplexing pick of this entire draft is Terrell Bernard. I
wouldn't even say it's the most perplexing, but we'll talk about that in a minute.
Wait, say it again?
I wouldn't even say it's the most perplexing, but we'll talk about that in a minute.
The most ridiculous? The most preposterous?
There was one, but not that one.
What other? How would you describe it?
Terrell Bernard. Honestly, like we talked about when we talked about the Carolina defense, I think Terrell Bernard, we didn't see the kind of defense that McDermott wants to run. This kind of gives you insight into their mind state. This was the last year that McDermott really said, Leslie, this is your go. This told you right there he was getting rid of Leslie Frazier, because Terrell Bernard is the kind of linebacker that he had in Carolina. Not Luke Kuechly, but that kind of the gap shooter that can drop in coverage, a safety kind of guy. Because like we talked about before, he likes to send pressure from different areas. Safeties come up, box, whatever. So this will give him the versatility that he's always wanted in the defensive back seven.
So you think they knew that Frazier was either gonna leave for another coaching job, or just well,
like you said,
quit?
Either gonna leave or we're gonna make him leave.
Okay, I like it. That's a very interesting thought. Khalil Shakir. I like the kid. I think he's a baller. I think he's got a baller mentality. He seems like one of those hard-nosed receivers. You know what I mean? Like. He's not afraid to get it, go over the middle and take some hits, and like an old school, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. He's got some old school flavor to him.
Now he worked out with Eric Moles in the offseason too, but this is a guy I'm not going to get excited about, because I learned in 2020 what happens. So
this is all going back to
Yes, until they show me he's not Isaiah Hodgins 2.0. I like Shakir. Don't get me wrong. I'm very high on the kid. Yeah. I'm very high on his skill set.
Them bringing in the amount of receivers that they brought in, though, it does look like they're going to do him the same way.
Yes. So as good as he is, and I'm very high on Khalil Shakir as a player and as a person, but I just don't think that they share the same sentiment.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're not going to dignify the 180th overall.
Oh, yes,
pick.
we are, though, because that's the most lame. That was the most idiotic pick of the draft.
You want to go into it?
I do, and the reason.
The punt god.
The reason why is because what did we have? We had a high-powered offense, right? Mm-hmm. So when you actually have to punt, what do you need? Directional kicking, a coffin corner. Mm-hmm. What couldn't he do? He couldn't hang the ball. Kicking, right? He had no directional kicking. He kicks 80 yards. Our offense is never going to allow you to kick 80 yards unless you're kicking out of Highmark Stadium. It's going to go clear out the back of the stadium if you're going to let this dude do what he does. So why did you pick him? I don't get that one. Oh, because he's a punt guy. We didn't need a punt guy. We had an offense. We got Diggs. We had Knox. We had Allen. They were humming.
Why pay one of these street free agents millions of dollars when we can just draft a guy in the 6th round?
Wasn't even the last round of the draft.
Yeah.
That was the most. Yeah. I didn't. Everybody. They
3 6th-round picks.
Yeah, and they use them. No, they had 1 6th-round pick. Let's put it like
that. Yeah, really.
Because Rice didn't make it out of. He didn't make it out of training out of preseason, and Luke Tenuta didn't make it to the team. He got poached.
Really?
Yeah, he got picked up right away.
My goodness. Christian Benford, 185.
He's a hit. He's a starter. He's a starter. May not be this year. It may not be a cornerback, but he's a starter.
Let me ask you this. Where Trey White is right now in his career, would you consider trading him and starting Elam and Benford? I
have seen this talk that Trey White's not going to be on the team in 2024. I've seen that talk. And I can see it. I was never that high on Trey White, honestly.
Me neither.
Yeah, I didn't. Elite, he's good. He was our best cornerback every year.
Yeah.
But he's not a top two, not top three. So, I mean, I can get by with that, especially if McDermott's the mastermind that he is. I can get by with it. So
Right.
I'm not worried about whether Benford lines up as a starter because I think he could do just fine.
Yeah. I think the elite physical trait thing is kind of what gets me on this because he doesn't have any elite physical traits. He's not a fast guy. He's not a, quick-footed guy.
Right.
He's your typical zone corner.
Right.
And anytime that he's gotten into man coverage with bigger receivers or faster receivers, basically anyone who outmatches him physically, he can't handle it.
Right. I think he's got to learn nuance, though. I really think it's a nuance thing. Once he learns how to maneuver and how to use leverage, he'll be fine. It comes with time. That definitely comes with, like you said before, playing in the game, not looking at film, not going through, reps versus air. You have to play against somebody and get burned.
Right.
And you have to watch it on film, and you got to learn from it. Yep. And that's what's going to suit him very well if he's got that kind of mind state.
Right. And so we said Luke Tenuta. That leaves us with one of the other competitors for the middle linebacker spot this year in Balen Spector.
I really like Balen Spector.
I do. He's a bigger guy.
Yeah.
He can play. He went to Clemson. I mean, they had some pretty good defensive runs as far as their roster. So,
but Spector he's like the antithesis of Tremaine Edmonds. He's stout against the run. He gets his head in the gaps. He plays with strength. He's not going to give you what you want dropping back in coverage. He can do it. He's just not as strong because he's not as long. He would be more of a strong side linebacker if you actually employed one. But I do think he would do some good things, especially on run downs in the middle linebacking position.
Okay. All right. So we'll stop there. We don't need to get into 2023.
Yeah, we did 2023 already, so there's no real deal. But I mean, in conclusion, what do we surmise from this? We're in cap hill, not because we have players, but because we can't draft our own.
Right.
We can't identify talent on other teams. I mean, people are taking people from our practice squad and using them. When are we going to start? I mean, that's what you need to ask yourself. When are we going to start doing what other teams do that are good? Because that's how you build the sustainable success that they talk about every time they get on the podium.
Right.
You can't do it by signing a backup Cameron Dantzler or something like that. You can't do it by signing Leonard Floyd's of the world. I mean, yeah, you can have one, but we already got Vaughn. But that signing also tells me, and I wish we would have finished a little earlier, but that brings the question, what defense are we running? Are we going to be an odd front this year? Because you got Von Miller, who's a linebacker. You can have Leonard Floyd as other linebacker. You can do whatever you want in middle linebacker.
Yeah.
You got Daquan Jones at your nose tackle. You got Ed Oliver. You got to make him good. So, I mean, Rousseau, you got to figure him in somewhere. But other than that, you have your 3-4 right there. You can run a 50 front if you want. So that's one of those deals where we really can't say what they're doing because the draft doesn't make sense.
It would be so funny if McDermott smiles at the camera in the same way that Frazier used to, and when they ask him, teams are trying to get you out of that nickel, and you just smile and say, I know.
Don't do it.
I would be so livid, bro. Like, if we're just stuck with this nickel defense all this coming year, with all these different style of players and all these different things that we can do with these players defensively now, and this is what we go with, the same stale nickel defense?
Same stale nickel, because you have to do something. So you got to realize you got to do something with Taron Johnson. You can't bench him, and he can't play on the outside.
Right.
So you kind of almost have to run a nickel because he's good. But in knowing that, why do you go ahead and do something that you might need to deviate from what's working for you? Are you going to put Taron Johnson at safety? No. I hope not. I mean, I can't say no because I wouldn't. But what is Taylor Rapp? Are you going to run a base dime?
Right.
Because he's a box safety, but Taylor Rapp, Terrell Bernard, and Dorian Williams are all the same guy, basically. So
you're just asking to get destroyed at that point. I think staying in the nickel, you're just asking to get destroyed on the ground.
Yeah, but I don't understand what they're doing. See, like you said earlier, when you're talking about getting in the game to get your reps, to get the feel for the game. All this rotational garbage is garbage.
Right.
Keeping our defensive ends fresh, it's garbage. Because what is it doing? When Von Miller went out, how good were our first guys?
Right.
Trash. They didn't play like trash, but they don't have the skill set to do what Von did.
Just the math alone, if we're looking at this from a logical, mathematical standpoint, you have, what, 5 DBs on the field, 2 linebackers, 4 defensive linemen, right? The way that you're trying to build your defensive line, you want your defensive line to do most of the work stopping the run.
Right.
Right? Now, in the nickel defense, you have 2 linebackers that are basically serving as backup to those defensive linemen, right? Because the way you built it, as we've established, they have the bigger role in stopping the run than the linebackers do.
Yep.
Right? Now, with that being the case, you have 5 offensive linemen who are trying to block 4 defensive linemen or move 4 defensive linemen out of the way.
Yep.
Now, what's going to happen when you have a guard and a center double team one guy, which is for the most part what they've been doing is they've been double teaming your one tech,
which has really been Ed Oliver a lot.
Right.
Which shouldn't be, but it has been.
And then they just one-on-one move the other guy out of the way.
Yep.
Now you got a gaping hole where your linebacker has to come and contend with either another lineman or a fullback or a tight end that's kind of cutting inside and getting a block or however that play unfolds.
Pin and pull works big on us. Pin and pull definitely works big.
Right. So when you look at the numbers in general, why would you stay in that defense? What's the logic behind staying in that defense, knowing that your biggest weakness is potentially the most deadliest weapon in the NFL is being able to run the ball down someone's throat? Because guess what? Unless the running back fumbles, there's no way for the defense to get the ball. And
what scares me about it is the aggressive talk. So you couldn't stop them when you're conservative. You're aggressive. You overrun plays.
Right.
You miss tackles, and you're giving up big plays. I mean, it might when it works, it's gonna be beautiful. But when it doesn't work, it's gonna hurt a lot.
Right. So, I mean, my conclusion on all this, to be honest, is I think Sean needs to be on the hot seat, bro. I think his seat needs to be broiling hot right now. Like, seriously. With the mismanagement of resources, the mismanagement of player personnel, the mismanagement of signings and all that kind of stuff, I can't look at the entire picture of what's been done, even with the playoff runs, even with being 13 seconds away from a Super Bowl, even with, 13 seconds wasn't from a Super Bowl. 13 seconds was away from an AFC championship.
Yep.
Which was another thing.
Yep.
Like, 13 seconds, everybody makes it seem like, oh, well, if we would have won that game, we would have went on to beat the Bengals. And, like, the Bengals were who they were that year. They were who they were that year. They had the same players. And their number 1 overall pick in who's the wide receiver they got?
Jamar Chase.
Jamar Chase. That year he was tearing everybody up. Nobody had the book on him. So imagine what he would have done to our secondary.
And I'm glad you said that. I'm going to shut up after this. But when you think about DeAndre Hopkins, okay, when you think about how much money you're going to pay this guy, who's going to be free soon? T. Higgins is going to be free soon.
Yeah.
He's a lot younger. And you could use him, but you're spending all this money elsewhere to back up guys that aren't even going to play for special teams. For what you're taking yourself out of sweepstakes.
Right.
So, I mean, even to a lesser extent, Jalen Waddle, he's going to be a free agent maybe because they have no money, but you screwed yourself because you didn't draft properly, and now you're tying money up and you kick all this restructuring garbage. That's what that does. Right. You take yourself out of the sweepstakes because you have guys you're familiar with. Now watch, I guarantee you, Zach Wilson, welcome to Buffalo next year.
No way.
Why not?
Why in the first place? Why would you do that in the first place?
Why'd you do it with Trubisky? Why'd you do it with Kyle Allen? A resurgence. Because, hey, why not? He's a name. Let's put him in the system.
Like, I could understand if they had traded Trubisky and got something for him, kind of in the sense of this quarterback pipeline that we had talked about before. Like, if you were taking guys that were bad on other teams, you're paying them lower cost contracts because you know they can't go out and get anything better, right? They come to your team, they play in a few games, they look better on your team, they look like they've learned and developed or something like that, and then you kick them out for a 4th round pick or something like that, and you just keep recycling that process. I get that 100%, but they didn't even trade Trubisky. It was just kind of like they literally did that as a favor for him.
And that's what I'm kind of getting at. Because if you look at Zach Wilson's numbers, his actual numbers are not that bad. They really weren't. So when you think about the way the Bills are moving, Kyle Allen, Mitch Trubisky, they were both 1-year deals. Mm-hmm. So we got to fill it in again next year, right?
Yeah.
And in my mind, Zach Wilson, he fits the bill just like the other two. Do I want it to happen? I don't want it to, but I wouldn't die if it did. However, I just see that being logical in what they do.
Right. Okay, I think we can just, before I go on another rant, I just how do you feel about all this? Like, do you think Sean, real quick before we close, do you think Sean needs to be on the hot seat?
You know what's funny? I think after all this, I think your research really hit home. You need to let Bean do his job. Because I'll take those drafts any day. They made sense.
Yeah.
You know, but McDermott, yeah, I mean, he has to be put, not, I don't say, maybe it's the same thing. Put on notice.
Right.
You've done this before. We've seen this movie.
Right.
We've been here. When are we going to get to the sequel? When are we going to get to the promised land?
And just for those people who are out there saying, well, Sean McDermott is the coach and the GM is the one that makes the picks. Just take a deep breath, take 2 steps back, and let's understand how this hiring process went forward, right? Sean was hired first. Then Brandon Beane got hired.
Sean hired Brandon Beane.
Exactly. Beane got hired because of his connection with Sean in Carolina. That was his hire, essentially. That whole first draft that Sean was here, they already had the draft work done from Whaley.
Yep.
So he didn't have to worry about having a GM in position right away.
Yep.
And so with Beane coming here, I don't understand any other way that you could see the positions in the way that they operate.
Right.
I just when you're head coach, it's the Bill Parcells model basically. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm the head coach. I'm gonna run this whole entire show. Yeah, you can have a GM to go handle all the scouting and all that kind of stuff, but he reports to me. He tells me all the information. I tell him I want that guy. I want that guy. I want that guy. I want that guy.
Yep.
That's how this thing has been working. So that's why we can say, you know, Sean's performance, all the drafts, all this stuff, it falls on Sean. Like, I can do 1 million scouting reports and give it to my head coach, and he can still pick the wrong players. I could make suggestions as to who I think are the right players. I have a track record as a GM in Brandon Beane, who has made some pretty good draft picks in Carolina. And he was the guy, again, like we established at the beginning of this episode, he set up the draft boards.
Yep.
Now, the draft boards are players at their proper values. Mm-hmm. Right? So looking at what we looked at, I would say he did a pretty darn good job.
I would too.
So anyway, long story short, just
take a breath. It'll be all right. We'll be back in the studio again.
Yeah.
Very soon.
Yeah.
So
go ahead.
As always, guys, thanks for showing up. And just understand, weird fan. Well, he's not a fan. I'm a supporter, I guess, just like him. And we're just like you. We're just normal guys talking about the team we love. So with that being said, anything in closing?
I don't want to get started again.
He's speechless.
That's it.
So make sure you subscribe. Make sure you hit the like button on your way out of the media room. And you guys have a great day.
All
From
right.
Keyshawn and from Aramis.
And from Aramis, this is the Post Podium Podcast, where it's all truth and no sodium. Y'all have a great night.